Hello all, and welcome to the Rails Board meeting. Today is Friday, October 28th, 2022. I am Alex Vancina, President of the Rails Board, and I call this meeting to order at 1 p.m. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Monica Caldecott,
Here.
Rosie Camargo, Alice Creason,
Here.
Juanita Harrell,
Here.
Robin Hellenthal,
Here.
Diane Hollister, Renee Leva,
Here.
Jennifer McIntosh. Here. Julie Milovec. Here. Becky Spratford.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Teppen.
Here.
Alex Vancina.
Here.
Vanessa Villarreal. Karen Voidick.
Here.
Have a quorum.
Thank you. On to recognition of guests and announcements. Since we have an in-person forum, we do not need to do roll call for every vote. We will handle guests and public comments at the same time. Let's start with the guests here in Burr Ridge. Deirdre?
Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
Monica Harris, Rails.
Mark Hatch, Rails. And I'm Dave Ferry. I'm currently with ISLAC. I'm currently serving as chair. I'm also trustee at the Bartlett Public Library. I'm a former member of Rails and president for 1 year. Thank you. It's good to be back.
Good to have you back.
Emily Feister Rails.
Connor, Rails.
Are there any public comments in Burr Ridge? If not, on to the State Library.
Hi, this is Karen Egan. And Greg McCormick should be joining us, and I see him joining us right now.
Thank you. Any public comments at the State Library?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Next, East Peoria.
No one's in East Peoria.
No one in East Peoria. Thank you. Emily, will you read the names of the guests on Zoom?
Sure. Jody Rubel, Ryan Hebel, Sharon Swanson, Mary Witt, Layla Heath, Joe Philippek, and I believe that's it. If I've missed you, please let me know.
Very good. Any public comments from Zoom participants? All right, Emily, did we receive any public comments by email?
We did not.
Thank you. All right, next we have the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to move any item to the regular agenda for further discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Julie, thank you.
Karen, second.
Karen? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
no. Motion carries. Next, we have Sharon Swanson with the financial report.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to beg your indulgence with my voice. I may have to mute myself occasionally and cough. So I will begin. The September 30th unassigned general fund cash and investment balance of $20.1 million would fund approximately 19.3 months of operations. Revenues through September of almost 4.1 million were approximately 0.6 million below budget. And this is due to only having received 2 live and learn payments from our fiscal year 23 APC grant as of September 30th. And this is partially offset by above budget reimbursement revenues from above budget participation in the EBSCO group purchase, which is great news, as well as much higher than budgeted investment income. And another bit of good news, on October 12th and October 14th, Rails received the 3rd Live and Learn payment, as well as the portion of the APC grant that is paid from the state's general fund. And these payments totaled $4,573,070. Thank you to the state library. Investment income was $92,049 through September, which already exceeds the total budgeted investment income of $77,769 for the entire fiscal year. We had budgeted a conservative 0.4 to 3% rate, but rates have been running at an average of 2.343% during the month of September due to the Federal Reserve's actions to raise interest rates in this very historic, aggressive fashion to combat inflation, and I wish they would stop. The new calendar year end target rate from the Federal Reserve is now 4.4%. And by the end of this next calendar year, they're expecting 4.6%. The fair market value of Rails' series of treasury notes decreased by $9,746 during the month of September due to these increasing interest rates, of course. Expenditures through September of over $4.1 million were approximately $242,000 below budget. And this is due primarily to library materials falling nearly $102,000 below budget. And this is due to timing differences between the actual pattern of Communico Cloud Platform Group purchases from the budgeted pattern that we had in our accounting system. Other under budget expenditures include contractual services, travel and continuing education, personnel, and buildings and grounds. And the majority of the under budget amounts were due to a lag in billings or timing differences between budget and actual expenditures, with the exceptions of personnel and buildings and grounds. So personnel was under budget due to the newly created consortial services supervisor position, which might I add just started with Rails on Tuesday this week. And also the digital communications specialist and library resource specialist positions, which are in the process of being hired, but we actually just today filled the library resource specialist position, which is fantastic. But that person won't be starting until 2 weeks from now. Several budgeted facility projects that have been deferred were the reason why buildings and grounds were under budget. Specifically, the carpet replacement at Coal Valley, which we've decided not to do at this point since we had a thorough cleaning and deodorizing that took care of the main problems. As well as carpet replacement at East Peoria, which we haven't done yet, and painting and fan installation in the delivery area of the East Peoria facility. During September, Rails incurred 2 budgeted capital projects expenditures for improvements to the landscaping at the Burr Ridge facility and also repaving the parking lot. And this did include a large project to correct a drainage problem that we had that if we hadn't corrected, this expenditure will come up again very, very quickly. And both of these projects came in under budget, thankfully. Delivery department expenditures through September of nearly $991,000 were 23.9% of the total general fund year-to-date general fund expenditures, and are budgeted to be 30.6% of the total budgeted expenditures for the general fund. And LSAP support expenditures of nearly $589,000 were 14.2% of the total general fund expenditures and are budgeted to be 16.4% of this total by year end. May I answer any questions?
All
Just
right.
for the record, Rosie Camargo and Vanessa Villarreal have joined via Zoom.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Next, I will start us off with reports. My report from the executive committee is that regarding the executive director search, which we will discuss later in the agenda. And also, I would like to present resolution number 2022-01, a resolution to designate the main meeting room at the Rails Burr Ridge Administrative Headquarters as the Deirdre Brennan meeting
Oh,
room.
my God. Sorry.
We'll read the resolution.
Whereas, when Deirdre Brennan began as Rails Executive Director in January 2013, the system was only able to offer a very limited number of basic services to members as a result of state budget cuts. And whereas Deirdre Brennan led successful efforts to change the administrative rules for library systems statewide to include continuing education and consulting as core system services, resulting in many educational events being held in the Burr Ridge main meeting room, as well as virtually and at other locations. And
Whereas Deirdre Brennan made it possible for all types and sizes of libraries to participate in resource sharing by expanding leadership and support to library consortia and initiating services like Find More Illinois to help not only consortium members, but standalone and non-automated libraries as well, with many meetings to discuss these initiatives taking place in Burr Ridge main meeting room. And whereas Deirdre Brennan had the vision to see the importance of e-resources early and to ensure that Rails offered programs like eRead Illinois and Explore More Illinois to Rails libraries and libraries statewide. With many meetings to discuss these initiatives with the Rails board, staff, and members taking place in the Burr Ridge main meeting room. And
whereas Deirdre Brennan has always been a fierce advocate for universal service and led efforts to waive non-resident card fees for members, leading eventually to the Cards for Kids legislation and the law extending this legislation to all Illinois children. With many meetings to discuss this legislation with the Rails Board of Universal Service Committee and others taking place in the Burr Ridge main meeting room. And whereas Deirdre Brennan led Rails staff to provide all of these services and many more, and is directly responsible for the full array of innovative programs and services that Rails offers today, with many of these services being conceived, discussed, and shared with members in the Burr Ridge main meeting room.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the president and the board of directors of the Reaching Across Illinois Library System as follows. Section 1, to name the main meeting room at the Rails Burr Ridge Administrative Headquarters as the D. Brennan Meeting Room. Section 2, to refer to the D. Brennan Meeting Room when publicizing events taking place in the room, including postings on the Rails website and the library directory and learning calendar in L2. Section 3, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from the date of its passage and approval.
May I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2022-01, designating the main meeting room at Rails Burr Ridge Service Center as the Deirdre Brennan Meeting Room?
So moved.
Thank you, Diane. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, no.
Well, that was.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. What's that?
We can be sneaky when we want. to.
Yeah, wow. Whatever happened to the,
Good thing you only use it for good.
Yes.
parents? I'm speechless again. I will just say thank you. And I did get that theme of all the meetings that.
Which you don't have to go to. You don't have to go to anymore. You can just be here literally in spirit.
Did you, and this is not a, don't take this the wrong way, but did this, because I was sort of like in a blank at the beginning. Were the standards in there, the standards meetings?
I think it was just every meeting that has ever.
Yeah, okay. I just, because that was,
Under the umbrella of
okay.
many meetings.
Yeah, okay, because those were like, anyway, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
And this was posted properly for.
Yes, Emily made sure it was
I did put a
legal.
revised agenda on after I gave the other agenda. Hoping that she did not look on the website.
Do a surprise with open meeting.
Yeah, right.
Very carefully.
Yeah,
Yeah, very carefully.
thank you all. Means a lot.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. I mean, you're welcome. Thank you. Oh, my, okay. Thank you.
The committee reports
Oh,
were
geez.
included in the agenda packet. Are there any questions about the committee reports? Not, then next we have Deirdre Brennan and Rails monthly report.
Okay. All right, well, thank you again, so much. Let's see, well, you, as always, you have my written report. I will just reiterate that the ILA conference was amazing, and not just for me personally, but it was just so great. I think everybody so loved being there together again, finally.
I have to give a shout out to whoever picked those bags because nobody could stop talking about those bag giveaways. The tote bags.
Oh.
Tote bag?
Yeah,
Oh,
they
yeah.
really are nice, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'll take, I did not take one. I'll
Have
take
one,
one. I
take
didn't take one at the
one.
conference because I wanted to make sure everybody else got them. too.
I
Yes.
did one. I'm like, forget them.
But people couldn't stop talking about them.
Yeah,
So good choice, whoever did that.
they're very nice.
We did have a couple of interesting conversations here afterwards. I think it was Layla brought it up about how ILA, the conference, kind of takes on an additional aspect, given that so much, is virtual these days. It is like a real gathering opportunity. So it's interesting and great and great for me. Really great, overwhelming, but great for Rails. The booth, as always, was packed. And I don't have the number. I think you're out there, Mary, right? In terms of the traffic we had at the booth.
Yes, we estimated
Yes.
691 visitors in 2 days, which is, I think, a record.
Yeah, and it's not, when you say 2 days, it's like 2 half days. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I
Sure.
mean, that's really, we had a lot of people taking advantage of the demos, which was great. Speaking of demos, I do want to give another shout out to Explore More. As you can see from here, we've added the Museum of Science and Industry, which is
exciting.
big. And there is, I think, underway, I don't know if we talked about this before, but a great collaboration with the Museums in the Park, which is all of those, Chicago museums, and the Chicago Public Library, which I think it's going to take a while to get the CPL off of the, printed passes, et cetera. But I think this is really going to be amazing. I mean, it's been amazing, but Jessica and Layla have been incredible. Let's see, what else did I want to say? Well, Islak, our chair, is here, but the meeting was canceled yesterday due to lack of a quorum, but so, it's a very important committee, and I'm very pleased that, that we have such a good chair. It's a great committee. And I've been the ex officio for this short, wonderful period of time, but I think Monica is going to, take over that as in the interim. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Anybody.
All right.
Deirdre, are you going to get that retirement present that you talked about of the state database package?
I don't know. Maybe we'll hear from the state library that I am.
That would be a great present. Just saying.
Not just for me, right?
All right. Next, we have the Illinois State Library.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I apologize trying to get in. I was booted out twice before.
Ooh.
So that's okay. I know.
Think personal.
It's all good. So what we're focusing on right now, the annual reports, of course, came in from the library systems on September 30th. Thank you for that submission. Karen and I did meet earlier this week and discuss those. We are still reviewing the final details, and we'll be getting back to each of the library systems regarding anything that we might have questions about still, or information that needs clarified. The Try It database trial opened for its 19th year. And all past participant libraries were notified of its availability. That free trial of databases runs from October 1 to November 30th. I think that, that could serve several purposes. If we do move to statewide databases, we could certainly look at activity and interest in certain packages, informing some decisions in that. So we look forward to a lot of participation, hopefully this year. Next week, of course, is the ISLE conference. I don't know if that's an agenda item yet to come, but the secretary will be present. And he will be at the annual luncheon on Friday. So
Wonderful.
looking forward to that. And we were completing briefings for him this week on that event. So that is really good news. The FY24 budget, we have been working on that document. Actually, the internal information that will be worked through the current administration and the next has been completed. And so we will be looking, to see what the next administration also brings as far as priorities for funding. Certainly those things that are in place now, we would think would remain, possibly some modifications and federal funding programs, which we will speak about a little bit later when we talk about the 5-year plan for the use of LSTA. The grants for school libraries, we did receive our final applications for that. They were due on October 15th. We actually received more applications than we awarded last year. So I think that's good news to see interest in that program. And we hope that, every applicant is awarded a grant. So we received 675 this year. And I think Jill said it represented 3,300 school library locations in the state, or is what they have requested on their applications. And of course, we will be verifying all of that. Grant programs coming up, the public library per capita grant program. We are receiving applications regularly on that. Those are due January 30th, of 2023, and the Live and Learn Construction Grant Program, January 15th of 2023. And we have been receiving a number of questions regarding support, or our office's support for local public library construction. So we're looking forward to a significant number of those. And then of course, the larger public library construction grant program, we do accept applications for those every year through April 15th. And that is compiled in a report, whether we have funding or not, and shared with the General Assembly on a regular basis, and also the Governor's Office of Management and Budget. As mentioned, ISLAC was canceled because of an issue with the quorum. We do have the next meeting dates scheduled and have advised all members. We'll be placing those dates also on our website. And so we do hope for a quorum at the next scheduled meeting, which would be January 26th. The chair, Dave Barry, and I and the vice chair, Stacy Carter, will be meeting in early December regarding the agenda for that January meeting. And I would hope, as I did at the Heartland Library System, that anyone who has an interest in a topic or something that that committee might take up, that you're sharing that with representatives from either area of the state, actually, for inclusion and discussion on something that might be acted upon by that committee, or a recommendation is made to the Secretary of State. And at that point, of course, we will be working with advice to a new administration. So I believe that's all for now, and you'll be hearing more from us later in the meeting.
Thank you, Greg.
Can I ask a couple of questions, Greg? Actually, first I have a comment.
Sure.
We noticed, well, Joe noticed, and then he sent it to us, Joe Philippek, that the per capita grant application is a little bit more specific this year about what libraries are doing with their money, that it's tied to the chapters in serving our public, which I think is awesome. Thank you for doing that. Something that we had talked about, we've talked about over the years, and, trying to get libraries, a better understanding of how they're progressing in terms of meeting,
Right.
Serving our public. So I think that's great. I'm sure we'll get questions about it, but we'll just tell them that it's a good thing. And I mean, seriously. And I also wondered, you're talking about the budget a little bit. When do you think you might know if the statewide database package might be included in the budget? Any idea?
Well, I think that will be a decision with the new administration.
Okay. Okay.
We have made mention of the need for this for several years.
Yes.
But,
Thank you.
that is mentioned in our current presentation, and that will have to be, we'll see what the new administration brings as priorities for the office and for libraries.
Right. Okay, great. That's helpful even. Thank you very much. That's it. That's what I wanted.
Any other questions for Greg? All right, thank you, Greg. We're going to go back to 7.3.2. We skipped over an item, service of the month.
Yes, it was, sorry, a little confusing about the title. It's not Sharon giving two financial reports, really. It's she is our service of the month this month. So take it away, Sharon.
Well, that was confusing. I thought that.
So I do have a PowerPoint presentation, so let me try to share this. And please tell me if you can see that.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So hello again, everyone. In addition to my normal financial report presentation this month, we thought that it might be helpful, especially for the new board members that were just seated in July, but also as a good refresher for longstanding board members. If I went through the report in a little bit more detail, all of the reports in a little bit more detail to discuss the composition and the various funds, as well as tips for reading the reports and some of the specifics of each. So Rails's accounting is done on a modified accrual basis instead of the accrual basis that most for-profit businesses or government enterprise funds or proprietary funds that are run like a business use. The modified accrual basis of accounting combines aspects of both cash basis accounting, which is primarily used for tax purposes. So it's just cash in, cash out, record expenses and revenues as they happen with the flow of cash. So it's a combination of cash and both accrual basis accounting. For instance, in our case, under modified accrual accounting standards, Rails can recognize area and per capita grant revenues within the fiscal year, as long as they are received within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year. So that's one of the little nuances of being part of modified accrual basis accounting. Rails presents financial statements in the annual audit report for both the government-wide statements and the fund financial statements. The government-wide statements have a longer-term focus and show the activity of the government as a whole, including non-monetary items such as net pension asset, the compensated absences, capital assets, facility lease amortization. It's those longer-term things. The fund financial statements have a shorter-term focus and are presented monthly to the board, which is where I'll be focusing my presentation today. Rails uses three different fund types. the general fund, the capital projects fund, and the special revenue fund. The general fund is used to pay all of the operating expenditures for the organization. And the capital projects fund is used for capital expenditures such as our recent landscaping project and parking lot repair and repaving. The capital projects fund was established in June 2015 with the net proceeds from the sales of the Wheeling, Shorewood, East Peoria, and Geneva predecessor system facilities. After we sold all of those off, the board designated that amount of money as an amount in this capital projects fund to fund future capital projects. And we have not had a need to fund the capital projects fund since that initial transfer. And it's not expected to run out of money for several years. But if we did need to fund it in the future, we would do a transfer from the general fund. Rails did have special revenue fund activity 2 years ago to track grants that were awarded to Rails other than our APC grant. But both the extension of the specialized cataloging grant and the new award for the maintenance and continued development of L2 were approved after our budget was finalized. Therefore, they're just being accounted for within the general fund. The first item that I normally reference in my monthly report is the cash position report. This report's goal is to show how long we could pay our operating expenditures with the cash on hand at the end of the month, assuming that we would receive no additional APC grant revenues from the state. This report takes total cash and investments, deducting the cash that the Rails board designated for the capital projects fund. Oh, and I skipped forward on my slides. Excuse me. And the Rails board in the past has had a goal of 18 months coverage in the general fund, but this cash coverage has gotten down to 9 months coverage in the past, specifically during the state's budget impasse. The monthly operating, we're right now at 19.3 months coverage, which is a little bit over the goal, so we're doing pretty well. The monthly operating expenditures exclude the reimbursement revenues from group purchases, since these are all billed back to the member libraries and do not affect the bottom line. So we're trying to get a true figure of how much our operating expenditures really are. Okay, so the next report shows the balance of Rails's cash and investments and the detail of all of Rails's accounts. The account that holds the bulk of Rails's funds is the money market account that we have with Wintrust. And this has $18.4 million, an $18.4 million balance at this point in time. Rails also has both a checking account and a money market account with them. And the interest rates that Wintrust offers track fairly closely with Illinois funds rates. We try to maintain a minimum balance in the checking account to maximize interest income that Rails will receive. And these funds with Wintrust are collateralized at 103% with 2 pledged securities, as well as spreading the balance of the accounts between the banks within their network to maintain balances that are under the $250,000 FDIC insurance limit. This is like a CDARS type arrangement for, I believe our coverage is 3.75 million. That's covered through the FDIC insurance by spreading between the network banks, and then everything else is collateralized with those 2 securities. The next report is the statement of net assets, which shows Rails's assets, liabilities, and fund balance as of the end of the month for both of Rails's active funds, as well as the total. As you can see, cash and investments are Rails's largest assets. The accounts receivable balance is rather high right now due to most of the larger group purchase billings that are generated in the first part of the year. The member libraries typically pay within a short period of time, so that balance should decrease rapidly. The major liability that we have is the balance of the funds held for consortium accounts, which accounts for the pass-through activity for the electronic content consortium. which has approximately 115 members, and also the Illinois Library Presents Group, which has nearly 200 members. And those are the two groups that we do billings for, and we pay the vendors, and it's simply a pass through for us, but we're able to have the capacity to provide that service to them. And this report calculates the beginning fund balance minus our deficit of revenues over expenditures to get the total fund balance. Okay. And the next two statements in the board packet show the general fund revenues and expenditures, which account for all of our operating expenditures, and then the capital projects fund revenues and expenditures. The first column shows expenditures for the month in question, which is September this time around. The second column shows the year-to-date actual, so everything that's occurred the fiscal year to date. And the next column shows the year-to-date budget amount. Then the variance between these two columns, the total budget for the fiscal year, and then the percentage of how much we have left to spend of the budget. The most useful column that I would point people to, at least for myself, is the fourth column, the year-to-date budget variance, which is what I refer to most often in my report. And this shows how expenditures are tracking, year-to-date expenditures are tracking against our year-to-date budget. The next statement in the packet shows, well, the next couple of statements show the two largest subfunds within the general fund. These are the two largest, so we do report on these individually, the delivery and the LSAP support. In fiscal year 2023, as I mentioned earlier, delivery accounts for 30.6% of total general fund expenditures, and the LSAP support accounts for 16.4% of total general fund expenditures. And then moving on to the monthly expenditure report, this shows an alphabetical listing of all of the payments made during the month to our vendors, with totals for multiple checks on the right-hand side. This column with the totals makes it simpler to pick out some of the vendors that we deal with more extensively. And this report is followed by the detail of the credit card expenditures, the total of which are listed on the check register, but we do want to provide that detail for you so that you're adequately reviewing all expenditures that have occurred. May I answer any questions?
This is Becky. I have a comment. That was awesome. I've been a trustee I've been a trustee since 2001. So I know how to read these things, and even I thought it was awesome.
Thank you, Becky.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Welcome.
And the charts that you are now including, Sharon, also very awesome. So, yeah.
I'm glad they're helpful.
I guess it was Tom who had the idea, but we all love it.
Yes.
Love it.
All right, thank you, Sharon. Now we're on to new business. Monica, will you start us off with the remote work policy?
Thank you, Alex. So you have included in your packet a draft remote work policy. As it notes in the memo, we are not voting on this policy today. This is just for discussion. But the policy committee met earlier this month to go over this first draft. And we wanted to share it with the board so that you also had an opportunity to look at this so that we could discuss any potential comments during our next policy committee meeting, which is on Monday. So we're coming up pretty close. But so we did want to make sure that you had the opportunity to look this over. It's quite an extensive policy. And of course, we felt the need to update this because of the changes in practice that we have had in Rails since COVID. We had been doing teleworking before COVID and had been certainly set up to do that here at Rails, but our practice around it has just changed considerably. The staff here has done a really terrific job of communicating and keeping up with their workload, but we at the same time felt like we needed to have this kind of best practice with all of these pieces covered, including situations under work comp and workplace safety and all of these other things that needed to be included. So we tried to do do that here. Since this last draft of the policy, we have had some additional conversations, both with HR Source, as well as our legal counsel from Ansel Blank. And so received some good feedback. There was one section that was in italics that you probably saw in there that was specifically about how to communicate out of state travel or residency. So we did check on some of that. They did have a suggestion that we essentially add a line that says something along the lines of requests for residency will be considered on a case-by-case basis. And that is just because, of course, Rails is spread over a very wide geographic area, including some areas that are very close to state borders. And we currently have now some people who might live in another state, but commute to work every day for in-person work. To us, it's a very different situation than someone who might be focused on doing member services, but is living, 8 states away and doesn't have the ability to be able to come back and forth. So we just want to be able to evaluate those situations on a case-by-case basis and have them approved. We have no intention of changing anything about our current staff that might have residencies in different spaces, but we just want to make that clear in this particular policy. I also serve as the treasurer for the Libraries of Illinois Risk Agency, along with Julie, who's the vice president. And we had a meeting yesterday where we were able to talk a little bit about work comp under remote work policies. And Rob Bush, who serves as the legal counsel for LIRA, mentioned that he would look over the policy for work comp related issues as opposed to employee related issues. And I think both are important to consider as part of this. Some of you may have had the opportunity to attend at the ILA conference. There was a really great program, I thought, that was about the employee-employer relationship post-COVID that was almost entirely focused on remote work policies and what you should have in a remote work policy and what's there. And I was very pleased that what they were talking about was covered here. But I do think it's an important thing for libraries who do have some level of remote work to consider. So are there any questions or comments or feedback based on the draft policy that you see here today?
I have a couple questions, and excuse me if I missed it, but I thought I read it closely. So this was very clearly for, you have to like petition and like apply to be remote work. But what about people who wanted like work remotely 2 days a week? If this felt like this was more like all or nothing, I didn't feel like there was in between in here at all.
It is intended to encompass all levels of remote work. So whether that's 1 day a week or somebody who might come into the office less frequently, like once a month. And so part of that is just setting up the agreement for what that level will be. We have very different positions with different levels of necessary in-person work. And so what we want to be able to do is to make sure that that agreement is in place. We are also going to be looking at updating the job descriptions to note the level of remote work.
Oh,
That's
that's a
part
great
of the
idea.
position. So that will also be achieved.
So I was more thinking like, and I think it's important. I thought the policy was great. I liked that there was also like money for people who work at home to cover like internet and things like that. But, and all the stuff about the computers that are provided and what is expected of the employee. But like, I was thinking like, what about people who, want to work 1 or 2 days a week from home and it's going to be a little more informal. I still think we need to be formal, but there's going to be room for that still?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, we have plenty of people who might work from home 1 day a week or,
But like change, right? Like 2 days, 1 week. Okay. I wanted to make sure there was room in here for that,
For
flexibility.
yes. I
Thank
agree
you.
with that.
I don't want to cause us more work and more people.
I think the idea is that it be very flexible, but yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I think the policy committee
Yes.
is meeting Monday. They're anxious, they specifically wanted to know if there was, right, Jennifer?
Right. I would just say Monica walked us through this policy piece by piece so we could clarify anything that, all the little details, and Ridley went through all the legal liability aspects of it. I really appreciate how you've been consulting very thoroughly, obviously not just kind of working off of assumptions. So I think that it reflects a lot of effort that's will make it more durable for the long run. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it in place because I think you do need this. And so, we'll look at it again at the policy committee again on Monday. I don't know how close we are to final approval, but I imagine.
I think we probably want to have Rob Bush look at it
Yeah.
before we are quite there, but
I'm
we're
interested
getting
in
much closer.
The workers' comp piece of that as well. So, yeah. And so, yeah, we'll kind of one more conversation about this based on feedback we received from you, so.
I noticed there's one line that says staff may be required to work in the office upon hire. Is that, and certainly that makes sense, or just because if you're new to here, we might want you in person. Is that to try to like move forward to get more people in person, or that's just kind of covering bases that just because, if Juanita and I have the same job and she has this arrangement, that doesn't mean that I necessarily get it. It's more the second.
It's a good question, Monica, and I think it's a little bit of both, right? There may be jobs that the job function does not necessarily require them to work a lot in the building, but when someone is new to Rails, there's just a lot to learn about the culture, about the libraries, about what their colleagues in other departments do. And so we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to give them the tools that they need in order to make those connections. And we feel like sometimes that's best done here in the office. So it's a little bit on a case-by-case basis, which is why we included that here. But we just wanted to note that even if your job description says you have the ability to work remotely, 60% of the time, we may require you to work from in the office, at least to start, because we need to have an understanding that you understand Rails and you understand the job.
Okay. I just noticed a couple of find and replace. There's still a few places in this draft where it says company.
Yes,
So,
yes,
yeah.
yes, we did hear that, and we
Okay.
and we'll do that. This was the original draft we showed to the policy committee back in September. Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? All right. Next, we have Deirdre, with a discussion of the board election process.
Yes, thank you. And again, this is just a discussion item. So we had a really good discussion about the whole election process and possible changes. It mostly centered on increasing the knowledge, information, understanding of the election process, and why it's important why the board is important, and also voting. Because only generally about 200 libraries vote out of practically 1,500 or 1,300. And so we talked about that, and we've made changes that I think have been helpful. We certainly have managed to recruit additional, I think our board is definitely more diverse than it was a few years ago. And we've had, but we still are only getting, a couple hundred libraries voting, and that doesn't, there's a disconnect there, I guess, when we're trying to figure out how we can improve that. So we talked about that quite a bit, also about what does diversity mean. And as you can see in the memo, it was a request that maybe the board should actually have a conversation at some point. I mean, I think we have in the past, but have a conversation again about what diversity means, because it has a lot of aspects. We've always, geography has always been a big consideration, but now there's a lot of areas to consider. There aren't any proposed changes to the bylaws, which is where the election is laid out at this point. It's more about, how to do a better job of explaining it and publicizing it, and getting, more voting and increasing diversity. So happy to hear any comments you have about that, any suggestions, again, that we can bring back to the policy committee on Monday. And if there's anything I forgot, policy committee members are here and can speak up. So I hope I'm looking at particularly at you, Renee, because you talked a lot about the voting part and about the understanding what the whole process was. And
yeah, I think many people are aware, and I think you mentioned it too. It's you don't have to be a director.
Right,
Rails,
exactly.
Which I didn't know.
Right, and neither did Rosie, who's also a new member of our board.
So it's one of those things where we just need to clarify and just make sure people are aware, like you said, the importance. I think just now that you're speaking, it would be nice to see if whoever's going to be the new director to have an a message from the director above the election process or who to vote for. So at least you get a message from the director stating the importance,
Yep.
why it's vital,
Yep.
and how significant it is to play this role, because the role is for 3 years.
Yep.
And
That's a great idea.
and we do get to decide a lot of things. And again, and there's another topic in regards to holidays, where if we're supposed to portray leadership, there's these type of things that we need to make sure we cover.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a good discussion.
I like Renee's point about making it more personal to vote.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking, and I think this dovetails with what you said exactly, in terms of getting the libraries to vote. Is there a way we could split up among the whole board? We all personally contact a certain number of libraries, either via email or phone call. I know it's a lot, but it's important. And I'm saying this as someone who's not running again, so I don't have to do it once. But I would be willing to do that. We can even ask former board members, like we
Sure.
could get, I mean, it's 1,500 libraries, but I think it's important enough that I would be willing to send out like a couple hundred emails, cut and paste, to make it like a personal connection. Obviously, the people running for reelection cannot send emails. But if we ask people like Dave and other people who've been on the board or who are involved with Rails on committees, and we split it up, and it came from the people who actually have put in the service, and we came up with obviously draft language that everyone sent, we could at least, I mean, I'd be willing to do that to help. I don't think I'd be willing to send 1,500, but I'd be willing to help send individual emails. Because it's true, people don't vote, and it's really upsetting.
And I think there's also an opportunity to maybe bring in some of our other partners who are already sending things out, like Atlas and Laconia, that are groups that.
Oh, and ask them to send general to their message, yeah.
Them to send it to their membership.
Oh, yeah, Art could do it,
"Hey,
yeah.
Remember, this is important.
Sure.
Participate.
Networking groups, everybody.
Yeah.
Back in Rails, right?
Yep.
I love that idea. And the other question I have is, are we abandoning the idea of pairing people in the election to increase? We talked about doing the ILA model for like a little bit where are we abandoning that?
There was not, I mean, we're not voting on anything.
Okay,
But there
no, but in the committee, was there discussion of
There
that?
was not a consensus that the process needs to be changed.
Got it.
But that doesn't mean we can't go back to that.
I think it's early days. We
Yeah.
were really just trying to map out what the biggest
Mhm.
impacts would be on
Okay.
just transforming the process to get more engagement, diversity, and because getting candidates on the ballot is one thing, but getting people to really pay attention and acknowledge and support diverse voices and make sure they end up on the board is the other piece of it.
It would be nice too in terms of inclusion issues, is maybe having video messages from each person, not just the written.
Right, well, we did this year include pictures because we realized that
For the
if,
first time.
sometimes you know someone, but you don't know that you know them, and so
Yeah.
even that helps. But I think we're definitely going to do like a candidates forum.
Yeah, because I think that would
And
be
I
good
know
for-
Mary Witt is out there listening and
Like
she just,
swiping right and left.
what's that?
But I think it does because some people do better visually and audio, and some people do better on paper. You want to include all the different ways people process information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, and every year we try to do more, but I think, as I say, I think the board is more diverse in a lot of ways, but still only 200 people vote.
No, that's really upsetting.
But dovetailing on Becky's comment about, personal invitations to encourage voting, something I've done on another board was asked current board members if they could all provide some sort of personal statement about what board service, what the value was to them.
Yeah.
That could be included in a group communication, like here are some statements from current board members about how the experience has been good for them and what they've gotten from it. So in that
Yeah.
welcome to please step forward, they could connect with, individual statements of endorsement for the experience, right?
I think that the personal touch has so much effect when
Yeah.
you do visits. Sue Busenbark and I have done fall and spring visits, and I think what we all emphasize, especially people in central Illinois and Kewanee area where she's from, how important it is to have someone represent us.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
she said, about the misconception that you have to be a library director.
Right, right.
Or a manager. to
Right.
be Involved. And when we have talked about that, it's like, really, I didn't know that. So I think too, that if we, and Sue and I are going to go on more visits this fall, but I think if we leave something with them, something like a statement from the board members of what this means, what's been accomplished, what you can do. Because as I say, when we had Al's, I mean, it was just this building in East Peoria. I mean, we had no
Alliance.
contact because we knew nothing
Yeah,
if we weren't in management.
right, right.
So I think the personal touch and visiting has
Yep.
so much effect. Because email is good, flyers are good. People can always toss them out, but when you see someone and talk to them and say, we need you to continue in central Illinois, because we're not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
So we need more involvement and
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know if this can be done, bring along someone, because I used to do this when I was in IOA. I bring a guest so
Mhm.
they could see what we do and what's covered during the meetings. And I think it makes them a little more comfortable.
Yep.
Like, okay.
Yep.
You know, I don't have to be a director.
Right.
Or in Cuba or whatever. I can be normal people and we're talking about things we have a passion for, libraries.
Yep.
And I know that I've brought up in the past too about the makeup of the board, and I know that there are certain,
Right.
you know, underlying, you know, requirements for a number of people on the board, but if possible, I will always advocate for more school library members on the board, just because I think it's an underrepresented group.
We have to find a trustee as a school librarian.
I
Is
also
that
want
you?
to,
That's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to add one more thing too. If you guys can also give us some pointers as to what to mention to people or other directors.
Yeah.
If they bring up Rails, just so that they're like, hey, the thing is Rails encompasses so many things and they do. And so I think you guys handed out a little marketing tool where you were able to flip the pages. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Like this little, I've never seen that before until I was here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I can take like 30 of those
Yeah.
back,
You
so I can
have
give
as
them
many
away.
as you want.
Yeah, but the thing is, the pointers as
I'm
to
on the
like
program
what things
committee,
you
so
want us to
planning that
mention
for a
to
year.
other directors, what,
Yep.
you know, how much involvement you want us to have. Because I have no problem talking to other directors or somehow accidentally sending an email to the directors list and
Oops.
both.
I should ask our director to do it because he's interim and not applying to be the director. I should ask him to do it.
But those are
Well-
things that we can do.
And if you look at as I'm sure you have all read carefully, this month at Rails, which is attached to my report, there's every month, there are the top 3 brief talking points. And this month, it's about the fact that Rails is going to be at the IO conference next week, that Rails is happy to visit your library. Monica's been making visits, board members can make visits, and some of you are volunteering, and Dan, of course, Dan
Yeah.
Bostrom. And that we're launching a data networking and school libraries group as well. So, I mean, there's all, and we do talking points for the advocacy committee, every month. So we should share those with the entire board, I guess, right?
The other thing I'm noticing too is, when we talk geographically is, it's hard. I didn't know until I started that I could attend like up in East Peoria, or you could go to Coal Valley.
Right.
And people say, but when I go up to a meeting, it's almost a whole day.
Yeah.
I know.
And a lot of
Yep.
places will say, most people, as long as they know ahead of time, the directors and stuff are fine with that. But it's still the fact that people don't realize that it's not, that they can go a little bit more locally and participate, and it doesn't mean you have to go up into the Chicago area
Right,
for every meeting, and which is nice.
right.
And the committees are the same way because we're meeting, by Zoom for the most part.
Yep.
And you can participate from,
Right.
your desk at work or from home or.
Right, or the service centers when
the service
the
center is-
emergency declaration finally does
Yeah,
go
the service
away.
centers are great though, because
Yep.
they have a dedicated space that you can go in and not be interrupted, which I like really a lot. so that you can actually participate there. So.
And this is all great. And I'm thinking you should all do like a video that we could then, show to the, the members. But I have to say, it's in defense and deference to my communications or our communications department, they do so much of this constantly. And you have to tell a person at
18
least
times.
7 different times, I think more these days. There's probably 7 times 7 before they actually, or maybe they just have to experience it. I don't know.
Constantly reminding people. It's like,
Right.
I send emails all the time. Who voted?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Local.
right, exactly.
Well, that's why I like if we sent email, I agree, because I think the communication is there. It's very clear. The election is coming. You need to vote. Every library has 1 vote. Like, it's very clear. But I do think the individual emails is a version of an individual visit, like Diane was saying, the personalization. And we can we can each follow up with them. And if I get an email sometimes and there's like a link, I act right away. Or I leave it in my inbox till I act, and it annoys me till I do it.
Yeah.
So, but I think we can use that. And if we each only have a certain number of people we're in charge of bothering, if we can each get like a third of our people to do it, that's a huge increase.
So Mary Witt, are you getting all this down? All these volunteer board members are going to do all this work for you.
Yes, I love it. I love volunteers. I love it.
Great.
The question about locations and means, I think that really speaks to being very clear about expectations.
true.
And everything to do. I think we need to go out of our way to anticipate every question somebody would have about board service, because there's inspiring somebody to step forward, and then there's them actually assessing whether or not they would
They can
really
do it.
follow through on it, because they know their life and they know what they can actually take on and what they can't take on. So yes, monthly meetings, but where? And understanding in-person quorums, and yes, there is some possibility to not always be in person, but I think all of that plays into it. A lot of people are going to step back if they don't feel comfortable.
Yep.
That's what
Well, thank you. This is all very helpful. And we'll keep talking about it.
I think we do have to have the conversation about what does diversity truly mean to
Yeah.
us, though. And that's that's not a policy committee decision. I
Right.
think that really is,
That's a future
deal.
agenda item for sure.
right.
Yeah.
We'll come back for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be thinking about it. What does it mean to
What
you
does
in
it
the Rails
mean?
context?
Yeah.
Right. Right, exactly.
We're currently working on that on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the Chicago Association of Law Libraries.
Oh,
This is the first year we've had our separate committee. So we just had a meeting last week. Oh, wow. Yeah, was it this? I think we just had a meeting.
what is time?
We
What
had
is
a meeting
time?
Tuesday where we're discussing and we want to know what does it mean to Chicago Association of Law Libraries. So we're going to try to put something in our newsletter to reach out and find out what it means. Yeah.
Love to learn from that. We should learn from what you discover.
Yeah, and we had
We
yesterday,
can learn from each other.
and speaking about not knowing, yesterday we had I'm on the ILA DEI committee for the board. And that was a meeting I had from the airport, but we had a meeting, and was on the agenda that time, but that is something we're also talking about. And we invited the ILA member diversity committee to come, and we were sort of, discussing and making sure we understood what was going on with each other. It's important because you have to define things clearly.
All right,
Great. Thank you.
to be continued.
Yes.
Next, we have rail staff holidays.
Yes.
Deirdre?
Again, this is a policy committee.
You were
With this,
picky.
there's actually, they did vote to recommend to the full board, voted unanimously, the addition of Martin Luther King's birthday when it's observed, and Juneteenth, which has a more official name, which somebody wrote down, and I don't remember what it is.
I thought it was Juneteenth. It has a more official
It's
name.
National, Jody wrote it down, National Independence, well, I guess it doesn't matter for these purposes.
I move that we accept those new closure dates for holidays.
I second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is Mary Witt with 3 new member requests.
Ooh. Yep.
Yes, hello, everyone. I'm actually filling in for Dan Bostrom, our member engagement manager, who has done all the work on these member requests. He is off today. We do have 3 membership applications, and they're all from schools. 2 are from public school library
great.
districts, and 1 is from a private school. You should have a lot of information on the different schools in your packet, but I'll briefly summarize each one, and I'll go in alphabetical order. The first one is Calumet Park School District 312, and that's located, of course, in Calumet Park. Dan spoke to an administrator from this school district earlier this year, and she came from another school district that is a Rails member, which always helps and kind of spread the word about the value for schools to be members. Dan also did visit this school in person. Most of the schools have been asking for virtual visits, but this happened to be an in-person visit. He spoke at length with the librarian there, Dr. Marlo Barnett. And Dr. Barnett will also be attending the ISLE conference next week, which will be great. We'll have to keep an eye out for her. The school is eager to update their catalog to follow Destiny, and they're very excited about system membership and think they would be a good fit for eRead Illinois. Dan also talked to them about the next round of My Library Is grants for school libraries, which is coming up this winter. Those grants have been of tremendous value to school libraries. So, and they've been very popular. The second school is a private one. It's Carmel Catholic High School. That's a private high school in Mundelein. And Dan said they have a really nice library space there. The librarian is Eric Franklin, and he worked at a Rails public library for a number of years. So again, he knows the advantages of being a Rails member. He's been with the school since before the pandemic, and the school is looking for new options for their catalog, and Dan thinks they would probably be a good fit for Find More Illinois. Finally, the last school is Grass Lake School District 36, which is located in Antioch. This is a 1-school district, and Dan spoke at length there with the librarian, Kathy McElhenney. I'm sorry, Kathy, I'm probably massacring your name. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Kathy worked for a long time at the Antioch Public Library, and again, is very familiar with Rails. The district is interested in eRead Illinois as well, and they are also interested in grants and continuing education. So we think all of these 3 applicants would make wonderful Rails member libraries, and we hope that the board will approve their applications. Do you have any questions?
All right, hearing none. Thank you, Mary. May I have a motion for approval of full membership for the 3 libraries as presented and request final approval from the Illinois State Library?
I move that we approve all 3 new school library applications.
Thank you, Monica. Second, Robin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries.
I can personally vouch for Eric Franklin. He's a good egg.
It's always good.
Yeah.
when you can have a
That's
personal
exciting. And next up is unfinished business and the executive director search update. The executive director job advertisement is now up and running. Emily, will you share that on screen?
Sure.
It's been posted on the Bradbury Miller website as well as the Rails website, and Bradbury is currently recruiting candidates as well. Are there any questions or comments about this?
I think it's a very awesome memo and a description.
Definitely.
An
And I
awesome
like
job.
all of the supporting documentation. So
Yes.
there's really a lot of information about the job, what it entails, what Rails.
You
is
scroll
doing.
down, Emily?
So this is the one on the Rails website. Bradbury Miller has it on theirs as well. And there's a counter on the page. It does seem like it's getting a lot of attention. I think it was up to 200 or so the last time I looked, and it's only been up for a couple of days.
Tuesday,
Tues-
maybe? or
Tuesday,
something like
earlier
that.
this week.
Monday.
So
It caught my eye at the bottom of the e-news, job
Yeah.
openings, and I'm used to seeing, a driver, and then you're like, whoa.
Yeah, there it is.
I did appreciate the survey that they came out with.
Oh,
So,
good. Yeah, I did, and I participated in that too.
Yeah.
That's great. I really like that. And I've been working with Brianna too, and she's wonderful, so.
Yeah, they're all very good. Get right back to us. Yeah, so,
applications are open through Sunday, November 27th. So we'll have more updates after that. If there are no questions, then next we'll move on to board development. And I believe Greg McCormick and Karen Egan will be presenting the LSTA long-range plan.
Yes, we were asked to give you an overview of the LSTA long-range plan, and just going to give some brief introductory remarks regarding that process and what it does mean for the state library. And then Karen Egan, this plan is a charge of her department, the library development group here at the state library. So I'm glad she could join me today in co-presenting this. So the plan is not simply about LSTA funding. In order to enable the state to receive funding, we also have to guarantee that we're expending a certain level of, or to receive the federal funding, that we're expending a certain level of state funding simultaneously. So throughout the plan, and what you will see, you may see things that, oh, that seems like that's a state-funded function. Well, yes, indeed that is, but we incorporate that into the overall plan for the use of both state and federal funding to achieve a goal for our state that is consistent with the purposes of the Library Services and Technology Act. And this has been a long-standing requirement of that program, that we must file something every 5 years for a 5-year plan for use of that funding. Prior to that, we were filing annually for use of that funding and then reporting back on how we achieved that. At the end of the 5-year period, which we finalized our evaluation of what we did the previous 5 years, just this past year as well. And that's utilized in compilation of that document, but then that evaluates how we not only achieved what we did in our plan, but also reaching the goals of the Library Services and Technology Act allocation given by the Institution of Museum and Library Services. So for instance, in FY22, the state library awarded 1,749 grants, totaling over $68 million, which did obviously include some large construction grants, which run that total up. But just a piece of that is, LSTA, of course. So, and that even including the American Rescue Plan Act funding, which was allocated based upon the same 5-year or the previous 5-year plan we had in place. That was less than 300 grants total that were using just federal money exclusively. So as far as, big recipients or how this funding is allocated in the state, the largest by far goes to the regional library systems through the Area and Per Capita Grant Program, but it is targeted for delivery services, and why we ask the systems to report quite specifically on delivery functions and how that funding that flows to each of the regional library systems for funding what impact that funding had, et cetera. Similarly, we use the state-funded portion of allocation for ILDS, which also goes to the 2 regional library systems as part of our matching project, and report data back on that, on how that is expended down to the line item detail of funding that is allocated through that program. So it's not the plan is not an exact map of funding allocation for LSTA in our state, but it is a broad picture of what might be achieved with that funding. And then based upon initiatives of whether it be the State Library Advisory Committee, the current administration, et cetera, what grant programs like Project Next Generation, or even literacy when it's operated by a public library, or a literacy program operated by a public library, how that particular grant might fit into this overall broad picture of use in the state. So with that, I think I'll stop, and then Karen, would you like to chime in and go through a little more of the detail?
Absolutely. I'm going to get into more of the details, and feel free to ask questions at the end if you have any. But just in general, to develop the long-range plan, as Greg alluded to, we had just finished the 5-year evaluation of the past 5 years conducted by the University of Illinois at Springfield Institute for Legal and Policy Studies. We always use an independent evaluator. And we built on the strengths and recommendations that they had included in their evaluation. We went through and compiled data and statistics about Illinois libraries and Illinois residents. We researched and got out our crystal balls to predict any trends that might be coming in the next 5 years. We listened. All of us listened on the staff as issues were discussed at system and statewide meetings, and had conversations with the library workforce to get their thoughts and insights. Now, while we can't do everything for everyone, the plan was written to align with the federal priorities and propose goals that embrace all types of libraries, serving patrons of all ages and abilities from across the state. Think big picture with this. As somebody told me a long time ago, these goals have to be broad enough to drive a Mack truck through. The plan was written to be inclusive. So when we're writing this, we think about the students at the University of Illinois and the students at Lincoln Elementary School. We considered McCook Public Library District with 247 patrons, as well as the Chicago Public Library with over 2.7 million patrons. We consider the needs of people using corporate libraries and those using medical libraries and the regional library systems. Need is a critical foundation for the long-range plan that drove the goals and potential activities. Now, these goals are deliberately general so that we can address any anticipated issue should the need arise over the next 5 years. So goal 1 is to position the Illinois library community to extend library services for all Illinois residents by providing access to information and ideas. This is a goal that we commonly have every year because whether academic, public, school, or special, library users across Illinois rely on their library for access to information. Couple of things. In fiscal year 21, public libraries reported an average of 54,000 people using Illinois public libraries every day, asking nearly 12,000 reference questions. That's from the IPLAR, the Illinois Public Library Annual Report. So with just over 4 million reference questions asked annually just at Illinois public libraries, libraries of all types are in a unique position to provide a balance of resources and services to support inquiring individuals of all ages and abilities. The Illinois Standards Aligned Instruction for Libraries, published by ISLE, the Association of Illinois School Library Educators, is based on K-12 students having access to information. Goal 1 aligns with their first standard, the ability of students to access information efficiently and effectively to inquire, think critically, and gain knowledge. The Illinois Digital Archives provides a seamless search tool to both unique historical resources and deposited electronic government documents of all types. On the average, 4,000 items are viewed daily in IDA. And we always hear that statewide delivery should always be a priority. So access to information and ideas could emphasize anything related to resource sharing, such as delivery, support for shared library consortial catalogs, digitization, and using technology as a tool for better services could also align with this goal. Goal 2 is position the Illinois library community as an educational anchor by providing opportunities to support education, information fluency, and lifelong learning. Now, as we all know, training for the library workforce has been and continues to be a cornerstone of helping libraries provide quality services for the patrons that they serve across Illinois. In addition, the FY21 Illinois report card data showed an increase in students not meeting or partially meeting standards, and a parallel decrease in the number of students that met or exceeded performance standards in English language arts on the reading assessment. Patrons of all ages look to libraries to support their self-directed education and learning. So increasing knowledge and improving skills are critical under this goal. This is where in the past we funded Directors University and projects like trustee training or support for Illinois Libraries Present, anything related to educational program, whether it's for toddlers, students, entrepreneurs, job seekers, teens, adults, people of any ages and abilities fall under this goal. Goal 3 is to position the Illinois library community to provide quality library and information services through innovation in collection development, community engagement, and best practices. Based on conversations with libraries, many identified changes within the demographics of the patrons or communities they serve, with special attention to how COVID impacted what was going on within their agency and their community they serve. To effectively engage their communities, libraries are looking for support to find innovative ways to address the needs and interests of their current patrons. And they also realize the importance of developing new programs and services to draw in new library users. Libraries also express the desire to expand and update current collections, but many libraries also want to develop collections beyond books to engage their communities. So with innovation and best practices, the overarching theme for Goal 3, this may support efforts to engage those who use or don't use the library, support efforts to develop innovative collections to meet the changing needs of people served, maybe support the efforts to meet the needs of people of diverse backgrounds and abilities, or support efforts to test new methods, try new ideas, and provide for the unknown. Now, none of these are written as grant offerings. That's not the purpose of this plan. These are possibilities under each goal. I mean, just think 5 years ago when we wrote the last 5-year plan, none of us had an inkling that there would be a global pandemic. So these goals are intentionally broad so that we could accommodate any anticipated need over the next 5 years. IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, has approved our long-range plan. And while our plan is inclusive, there are strict federal laws and rules governing the use of LSTA. If your library has ever received an LSTA grant, you know from the grant agreement that your library must also abide by those laws. For example, LSTA and projects used toward cost share can never be used for construction, advocacy, or the general marketing of libraries in general. You can always market the project, but just general marketing, you can't do. And One of the other provisions of LSTA is that it's used to complement, not duplicate or compete with funding from other state agencies that also provide funding in Illinois. So as an example, we explained that while the Illinois State Board of Education supports school districts in whole, our LSTA funding would specifically support school libraries. Our long-range plan for the use of LSTA is grounded in accountability for the funds and compliance with federal laws, while still being flexible enough, we hope to do whatever is necessary to be done in the next 5 years. So does anybody have any questions for us about the long-range plan?
Well, I do, but I'm waiting for the board.
Karen, this is Jennifer. I'm interested in how Illinois' plan kind of compares to other states. I was kind of just browsing some of the other state plans on the website, the IMLS website. Just kind of curious. Looks like our priorities are very heavy on resource sharing. Other states don't really seem to. I mean, obviously, I'm sure different states, they just identify their own priorities and move. But I'm just kind of curious how Illinois compares to other states in terms of how we use the money.
Jennifer, that is a wonderful question. One of the things to keep in mind is in many of the other states, and I don't have that statistic in front of me, but they use the LSTA funding to support the state library and projects that the state library issues from two libraries. For example, in many states, the youth services consultant at the state library is responsible for the statewide summer reading program. And they use LSTA in order to fund the statewide summer reading program. In Illinois, that's an ILA activity, not a state library activity. And so depending on the state and how they use that funding, that often drives how the funds are used. Greg, do you have anything you'd like to jump in here too on that?
I think also that, you know, in many state library administrative agencies, it's simply a limited public library focus where it's a multi-type engagement. And that's, you know, in part why we have the regional library systems to assure the cooperation between all types of libraries in the state. So that is going to make the resource sharing, that's the purpose, a little more predominant in this plan or many of the things that we do.
I have a question. This is Renee. How will the election impact if, let's say, someone wins and it's not in support of some of these initiatives? And the person is the state librarian?
I can't imagine that anyone would be elected that would be opposed to some of the initiatives. I do think that, you know, at the time, you know, looking at any of the funding that may be available or a redirection of it, that's how Project Next Generation was developed in this state. That was something that the current secretary had great interest in and wanted to establish, and it was the charge of this department to find the appropriate funding to help support that. So, but I think we should look at it more as new opportunities for what might be funded differently.
And that's why we have goal 3 for innovation and creativity. So we might be able to put something under goal 3. If someone wants to do something, some kind of educational program in libraries, we could do it under goal 2. So there are ways we can put it, you know, in these categories. We also have the opportunity that if we ever needed to change the scope of it entirely, we could amend it with IMLS.
So I'm wondering about a couple things. So there's a lot of in here about, you know, important, you know, how important libraries are to residents and being sure through resource sharing as one example, that library, you know, that residents get services, information, et cetera, that they need. But I don't see universal service or the unserved mentioned anywhere. Is that because that's more of a, you see that as a statewide responsibility as opposed to a federal responsibility?
Can I jump in that, Greg?
Sure.
One of the things we do is we do not say in this plan that the people served by these projects have to live in a library territory. You'll notice that that is never stated in here. This is an Illinois plan. And so it is, if a library wanted to include unserved, what we cannot do is we cannot do any kind of activities that would result in a vote, because that would be considered advocacy. So we have to be very careful about that. Does that make sense, Dee?
Yes,
Yeah,
but.
so to answer your
it's-
question, it could be funded. It's not specifically stated, there was a huge reliance on federal funding historically before many regulations changed for Project Plus advancement of universal
Right.
or toward universal service.
Right.
But then regulations kind of changed and we were required to back away from those efforts. But indeed it could. And depending upon what discussions occur with ISLAC and what will be its newly formed subcommittee, possibly federal funding would be utilized to support some of those activities.
I will say, Deidre, because I obviously read it for universal services as well, being on that committee, I actually read it as more open to universal services than I've seen in the past.
Okay, well, that's
So,
great. Thank you. I didn't see the last one. And then, of course, as I have to ask the question about OCLC, of course, which is, called out very specifically in here as a project, through a subscription to OCLC WorldCat Discovery / First Search or similar database suite. Does that mean that you couldn't, switch over to something different, that you couldn't use Find More Illinois, which is, a purely Illinois resource that's much less expensive? It would seem to me that that might be a better use of funds for everybody.
I mean, it could be. I'm not going to say it couldn't.
Okay.
However, we have the issue of there are still 1,041 libraries who are using OCLC in this state, comparative
Right.
to the number who are using Find More Illinois. It's significantly
Right.
different. And if we did not support WorldCat, the resource sharing piece of this, all of their bills would supposedly increase.
All right, well, I won't.
So I mean, this
but
is probably not the place to debate that. I mean, but that's
No,
a
it's not.
concern. It certainly could, but it's not insignificant use of that product in this state. And that, that's something that has historically occurred over a 40-year period.
I just know from the work that we've done on Find More, that other states do use the Find More, the software that Find More is based on instead of OCLC. And so I just hope that that is not allowed because, under the terms of this plan. That's all.
And Dee,
That's
you
what
said
that's
it.
where I'm going.
You said it too. The wiggle room is or similar database.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. If there are.
I would add one other thing too, is we felt that diversity was important enough not to put in a bucket in this plan, that we could have it a thread running through every one of these goals so that it could be included throughout everything that is done. I would add too, if you think of questions later, feel free to send an email to Greg or I, and we'd be happy to respond.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you both. I appreciate that you took the time to come and talk to us about it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have Rails board member reports. This is the time that board members can share information about events or programs in their library. Does anyone have anything they would like to share at this time?
Yes, I would like to, on behalf of ISLE, I would love to thank Rails for being such a gracious supporter, a platinum supporter of our conference. I would like to thank Jeanette Jarucki and Grant for giving a school data concurrent session and just for being present. I feel like the relationship between Rails and ISLE is truly a strong partnership now, and that only benefits every side, both sides, and all of the school library members. I had the chance to speak a lot about the things that I know that Rails is doing now to many of my high school library colleagues, and everyone is just really kind of eyes opening a little bit in such a positive way about the ways that that Rails is serving school library members. So thank you so much for being such a wonderful support, and I look forward to all the fun we're going to have next week.
Thank you for that, Monica.
Yes.
But as we have said, over the years, and as school librarians have said, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We have the same users, and if they don't learn from you, then when they get to the public library, it's really a disaster. So
Mhm.
we all care about all types of library, going back to the multi-type thing. So.
Yeah, but I feel I've been on the program committee planning the conference this year, and I think that I think I was just more aware of things and more able to say, how about this? And let's invite that person. And so I look forward to
that's great.
A continued strong partnership.
It's great.
It's not about my library, but it's about a Rails library. So this will actually be in the Sunday Chicago Tribune. The Glen Ellen Public Library hosted a haunted library, and I was actually part of it as a consultant. And it was a collaboration between the Glen Ellen Public Library. I want to give a shout out to Jeannie Vaughn, who was in charge of it. And it was her idea. It was a collaboration between the Chicago Association of Horror Writers, this Horror Writers Association Chicago chapter, which I'm in, the Glen Ellen Public Library, and the Glenbard West High School Drama Department or Theater Group. And what we did on Friday was they took 4 local authors plus Stephen King, but there were 4 local authors there, 4 or 5, and they took scenes, they paid for their intellectual property. They took scenes from these local authors' books, one of them being Daniel Krauss, New York Times bestseller, but other small authors, including one from Downers Grove, who teaches at College of DuPage, but I don't know his real name. I know his pen name. And their work were taken by the Glenbard West High School kids and turned into like live skits.
Cool.
And the library hosted it. Myself and some of the Glen Ellen trustees were tour guides. And we took 650 people through. We got a report from Dawn Bussey right after, the director, saying that not only did we see it was a success, but to hear people saying, see you next year as they were leaving was fantastic. When the Chicago Tribune contacted me about an article about horror in general, I said, hey, we're doing this thing. And they came, they sent a photographer, he came, his family went through it. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to see collaboration and success through the public library as a centerpiece. They closed early. There was even stuff for the children at the concurrently, and to see authors working with this high school and the library. And I was just really proud to be part of it. Very small part, but it was very exciting.
It's great.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Any other reports?
Bloomington Public Library is still in renovation and expansion. But I heard that we have our fingers crossed that possibly in the fall we'll have our ribbon cutting next month. So we're very excited. And I have a general question. I'm on another organization called Illinois Reading Council. Have you heard of it? Okay.
Well, from you, but that's the
For
only,
me,
yeah.
it's wonderful. And I get email from them, and because I was a children's librarian for so long, I was introduced to what I consider the best bookstore in Illinois, Anderson's. So I had an opportunity. They sent me a email and they said, we're having book gossip. And I'm like, my radar went up, and So I got on there on Tuesday when I came home from, teaching, and I'm like, it was such a treat. And I'm just wondering if we could contact them. I mean, they're in Bloomington. And maybe we could put this in our news if there's other children's librarians that might be interested when they have these programs, 'cause I think they're so quality. They have so, I mean, it just gets me really excited. Because typically Becky Anderson does the book talks, but they had Catherine March. She's equally as good. But I just wondered if maybe that's possible.
I'll talk to Mary next week about it. We just have to be a little careful that we don't endorse any particular,
Okay,
for profit, but I'm sure there are ways, you know what I mean?
thank you.
Yeah, sure. You said it's book gossip?
It's called Book Gossip. And
All right,
all
and
of the
just, and it's
conferences-
children's books?
No, no.
Oh.
When Becky does it, it's for adults.
I got
too,
it.
but-
Okay.
But she does put like YA, I mean, she does it
Okay.
for all ages.
We
It's
will check.
fabulous.
Sounds
And
like
when
fun.
we have our conference, she does one evening, 1 hour. Have you been to it? And it's fabulous. We have popcorn. I feel like I'm a kid again, but anyway.
Yeah.
And then from Downers Grove Library, just we're about to go into, because we don't have enough going on, some renovation projects. So starting on, the first part is probably going to be the most painful. November 7th, our elevator will go down and will be out of service for a minimum of 3 weeks.
Oh.
While we do a full elevator modernization. This is the problem with having a single elevator in your whole building. And then we will start immediately into a workroom renovation project that will address some inequities in our staff workspaces. So it should be interesting time for us, but our main meeting room will be closed to the public for like 4 months. So that's going to be a huge part of this, because large segments of my staff will be working from the meeting room while we're renovating their workspaces.
Good luck. What's
glad-
not on the main floor? What won't people, I mean, what?
Oh, the entire adult services
Okay.
department.
I was afraid you were gonna say
computing
that.
I was gonna say, almost everything's upstairs at that library.
Yeah, just a few things. There's a whole plan. We're going to put some public computers down in what is our lobby cafe right now. It will now be the annex for the public computing. We're going to have one of our computer help desk associates assigned down there. We'll also have an annex to the our adult and teen services desk will also be down in the lobby, and they'll have their own little walkie-talkies on their own frequency to call up to get people to bring things.
Oh,
down.
man. Good luck.
So it'll be fun.
I got something, Peoria. We just did, and this was October 15th is when they did the unveiling. They did what's called Big Picture Peoria. And they've done augmented reality murals at the main library. They're we have a big, area of windows. So each one of them has a local history, a person that's important to Peoria's local history. And then if you go up and you have your QR code, you get something about that person, and they've had different people that actually portrayed them. So you get kind of a, almost like the person is speaking from, their history. And it's just really cool. And my picture is not great here. I can't get it to come up, but this is, if you can see this, I can pass my phone around.
Yeah,
if you like
pass your
it.
phone, yeah.
Yeah, and this is what it looks like.
That's
And
great.
There are
Cool.
pictures on the front of it.
Lydia
And
Moss Bradley.
yes, she's on there too. Yeah. So it's really cool. So if you're in Peoria and you're going downtown, you can see our augmented windows.
That's cool.
Anyone else?
I'd say, so for all the courthouses in Illinois, the state passed a resolution where the courthouses have the option of allowing people to bring their cell phones in. DuPage opted out of that. So the problem we run into in the law library is people are in the courthouse and they're using Zoom Court. and they need to call their attorney. So they have to run all the way out to their car.
Oh,
Oh,
come back in,
yeah.
And then use it, or they just need to call their ride because you can't bring your
Sure.
phone in. So me and my staff, there's just 3 of us, we finally were like, what can we do? How can we make this easier? We just simply added another phone line to the desk that we don't use. And it's been getting used so much.
Oh, brilliant.
Like even today, someone was like, can I call my attorney? Like, we have a phone right here. There's pay phones downstairs, but people clean out their pockets because you have to go through the building.
Oh my God.
Oh,
It's like a catch
So we
22.
were saying you could use the payphone. They're like, well, I don't have change. So I was like, what can we do? So we put in a phone, just an extra phone line at the desk. And attorneys have used it, patrons, everything. It's just made it that, just something little, just to
Yeah.
keep them from having to run down.
that's really great.
That's wonderful.
And you're getting all those new patrons.
Good problem solving.
See, I think my problem would be all of my phone numbers are in my phone.
That's what I was thinking. That was actually my first thought. Like, that's not gonna help me because I don't know anybody's phone number. Like, I don't even know my children's phone number.
I'm surprised at the amount of people
It's
just
true.
pick up and they're like,
Because you used to have to memorize them.
Yeah, I literally don't know my
Yeah.
children's cell phone numbers.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know my son's no number at all. Yeah. Interesting. Wow, that's cool. But why did they, if you don't mind, why did they opt out?
I was gonna ask that.
I'd rather not say it right now.
Okay, all right, yeah. Oh, well.
Post meeting.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay. If not, next we're on to meeting recap and agenda building for the next board meeting. Our next board meeting will be November 18th, 2022 at 1 p.m. This will be Deirdre's last day and last
Indeed.
meeting at Rails
Me, indeed.
after many meetings.
Many, many, many.
There will be a lunch celebration beginning at 11 a.m. So you can all join us then.
With margaritas.
I mean, she can drink, but we can't.
I wish, yeah.
We'll give an update on the executive director search at that. Is there anything else that we need to add for next time?
Think so. Generally, we haven't met in December, as I think you all know that. So
Good reminder, though.
All right, so yes, that will be our last meeting of the year.
There are
No
no.
meetings. Okay.
If there's nothing else, we do need a closed session today. So the board will now move into closed session to discuss matters pertaining to personnel as per 5 Illinois compiled statutes, chapter 120, paragraph 2, section C1, which states exceptions. A public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following subjects. 2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. May I have a motion to move into closed session?
So moved. Julie.
Diane?
I'll second.
Second, Julie. All right, all in favor? We do need a roll call for this. Emily?
Rosie Camargo,
She's there somewhere.
Rosie. Alice Creason,
Yes.
Juanita Harrell,
Yes.
Robin Hellenthal,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Renee Leva,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
sorry, Julie Mellebeck,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg, Beth Tevin, Alex Mancina,
Yes.
Vanessa Villarreal,
Yes.
Karen Boydick,
Yes.
and Monica Caldecott.
Yes.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We have no actions to follow up on from closed session, so we will adjourn at 3:11 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you.